So my name is Sammy Neighborhouse, as Deanna said. I am currently now a second year, and I'm also working concurrently on my master's in vet micro, as she mentioned before. And I actually took a year in between undergrad and vet school to start my master's. So I was able to get in a lot of the research, which made it a lot easier because now it's less hands-on work and more just writing. But that's also a good opportunity, but not something that you need to decide right now. I don't know what else you guys want to know about me. Oh, I'm looking to go into production animals. I'm from Northwest Iowa. Let's see.
Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what your thoughts on the application process? Like, was it, did you turn it in early? Did you wait till 11:57?
So, I actually applied twice. So if you don't get in the first time, not the end of the world. The first time I applied, I didn't put the time into my application that I should have, and I actually missed the supplemental app for Iowa State. So that's like something. I was one of those, so you can just like kick yourself for that for forever, but it actually worked out for the best, to be quite honest. And that one I turned in on like the 14th, like it was definitely not early and I didn't put enough time into it. But the second year that I applied, so whenever that was, like last year or the year before, I did put a lot more time into it, and I made sure that I had a lot of people proofread my essays for both content as well as like grammar, as I mentioned before. I don't remember. I don't know. You guys have different essays than what I had, which is good because I hated the personal statement, to be quite honest. So this is a really nice change for you guys. It wasn't very directed, in my opinion. I didn't know what to tell them about myself. But just remember that your essays are like your only place to really tell them about yourself, since they aren't doing interviews anymore. So be sure you're answering the questions. And I wanted to make sure that I like gave it a little bit of a personal touch while still keeping it professional. Let's see. I don't know if you guys want to know a little bit about like what experience I had when applying. So I worked in the diagnostic lab in the clinical microbiology lab as an undergrad student, which I continued on, and I still work there now. But I didn't have many hours with a vet. So if you don't have many hours with a vet, I wouldn't like discount your chances of getting in completely. Because I managed to do it. I think I only had about 50 hours, but I did also have volunteer experience and leadership experience that helped to kind of diversify myself. Does anyone have any questions for me? Yeah.
So you said the second time around you spent more time on your application. Like, did you do it like so many hours a week, or how much time did you spend on it the second time around?
So when I went through, I tried to remember what I put in my essays the first time around. By the way, save your essays because it'll save you a little bit of time if you have to reapply. I would say I put in like 1 to 2 hours a week when I was free and got like the bulk of the essays, because then once you get the bulk of the essays, then it's just editing, and you could do that for like a half hour here, a half hour there, because I think it's kind of good to take a little bit of a mental break every now and then so that you come back with a fresh mind. Because when you're standing there staring at an essay for like 3 hours, you're like, yeah, this looks great. I might as well turn it in now, but don't do that. Maybe come back to it like the next week. So whenever you're free, I would say, you have free time, might as well work on it, right? That's probably the most important application you'll ever do in your life, right? No pressure. Anyone else?
What did you do for like extracurriculars in undergrad?
So during undergrad, I was involved in the pre-vet club. I went to Iowa State and majored in animal science for undergrad. So I was involved in the pre-vet club there. I was also involved in an honor society. And then I also worked as an ANSI guide in the animal science department. So just giving tours to prospective students to the animal science department. Gosh, seems like so long ago. I think those were the main ones. And then I like volunteered whenever I could with like back home with like the church and the chamber and such. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Just like make sure to diversify your experience. Like if you have the opportunity to go and do something fun or like a study abroad trip. I did a study abroad trip the summer after I graduated from undergrad. So like during the summer when I was doing my vet school application, which I think helped to give me a little bit more cultural experience because coming from the Midwest, I didn't really get much cultural diversity. So I thought that was helpful. Anyone else?
We've got a question from our webinar crew. How many veterinary schools did you apply to?
Okay, so the question was, how many vet schools did I apply to? And because I started my master's here, I was kind of stuck to working here, which was fine because this is my in-state and obviously the lowest tuition. So yeah, I only applied here, and thankfully they let me in the second time once I finished my entire application. Finish your entire application is what you guys should get from that story. Anyone else?
This is a question maybe more geared towards, it's like a student question versus an application question. Okay. So how do you feel the course load, maybe in undergrad, prepared you for your course load in vet school?
Okay, so the question was, how did undergrad course load prepare me for the vet school course load? So I don't think there's anything that can truly prepare you for the vet school course load, to be quite honest. Like, it's incredibly overwhelming, which, I mean, you're in a professional program trying to become a doctor, so I guess that's to be expected. I would say in undergrad, I definitely didn't have to study. Like, I'm sure a lot of you don't have to study that much for tests. Like, the night or two before is totally acceptable. But here I studied for like a week before the test or 2 weeks before the test. So I think you can try to be as good of a student in undergrad, but once you get here, your study habits will likely change, which is fine. I think everyone's study habits change. So, yeah. Anyone else?
So since you didn't really have much veterinary experience, who did you ask for your letters of recommendation?
So the question was, who did I ask for letters of recommendation since I didn't have much vet experience? So I had my supervisor in the lab that I had worked in write me a letter of recommendation. And I also worked in the large animal hospital here during undergrad. And so I had my boss write me a letter of recommendation. And then for vets to write me a letter of recommendation, I had my major professor for grad school, who's a DVM PhD that works downstairs in the bacteriology section. Felt like I had more than that. No, I think that's it, actually. So I had one vet who just doesn't do clinical work. It got me in. Yeah.
Kind of playing off your letters of recommendation.
Yeah.
Are some who would you consider to be good people to choose them for recommendations?
Okay, so the question was, who would be good people to choose for letters of recommendation? So as I'm sure they mentioned, just people that know you really, really well. Like the clinical microbiology lab, I said that I worked there in undergrad. So by the time I had asked her for a letter of recommendation, I think I had worked there for like 2 or 3 years. And she knew that I worked hard and I always showed up on time and I was always willing to go above and beyond. So I'm confident that that was a really good letter of recommendation. My boss in the large animal hospital, I wanted someone that was from Iowa State and had worked with the vets here, and that also knew my work ethic, because even if I don't have much vet experience, I do work hard. So I wanted people that would reflect on that. And then my major professor, I chose him because he had worked pretty closely with me and again knew that I could put in the extra time because we were doing a lot of work during that year that I took to just work on my master's. So I think, just to reiterate what I'm sure they said, people that know you really, really well, don't just go and ask some vet that you've shadowed for a few hours here and a few hours there, because I have vets like that too, but I didn't think that they knew me well enough. And I didn't just want someone to be like, yeah, she showed up and she watched us do stuff, because that's not what the admissions committee wants to see. They want to hear about what kind of person you are and what your work ethic is and how you are as a student. So if you have and I had my advisor from undergrad also write me a letter of recommendation, because I had worked pretty closely with her too. So someone that can maybe speak to your ability to work like as a student would also be good, in my opinion. So, yeah. Anyone else?
So what do you wish you had, other than filling out the supplemental application?
Finish your application.
Remember your name, so you're good.
Perfect. I feel like I've come a long way since then, right?
What do you wish you would have known about the application or like the process?
Yeah. So I know that it takes a long time to enter all of the information, like what you've done, and it's hard to remember exactly what you've done. So taking the time to just like sit down and maybe like make a list of exactly what I had done, or keeping a running tally of what I had been doing up to that point, which I guess it's a little late for that if you haven't been doing that. But also spending more time on my supplemental, or obviously the supplemental, right? The essays, because like I've mentioned, those are the only place that you can really explain yourself or like say something sort of out of the box, because otherwise you're just like filling in little drop down menus, right? So yeah, I would just say like spend most of your time on the essays while making sure that you finish all the rest of it.